When Adolf Hitler came to power in 1933, he wasn't just thinking about soldiers, tanks, or battles. He was thinking about children. To Hitler, real power meant shaping the future, and the only way to control the future was to mold young minds. "He alone who owns the youth," Hitler once said, "gains the future." And so began one of the most disturbing experiments in indoctrination in modern history. It started innocently enough: campfires, hiking, songs, and uniforms. But behind the cheerful facade of the Hitler Youth was a dark objective: obedience without question. From the moment a child entered Nazi programs, they were taught to think less, feel less, and follow more. Loyalty to family was replaced with loyalty to the Führer. The state became their only parent. Individuality was the enemy. Doubt was betrayal. This wasn't education. It was psychological training. The classroom became a battlefield for the Nazi regime, not with guns, but with textbooks. Math problems taught how many bombs would kill the most Jews. Biology lessons described Aryans as superior beings. History erased German failures and glorified Hitler as a savior. Even fairy tales were rewritten to serve the Reich. Children learned that Jews were subhuman, that loyalty to Hitler came before anything, even their own families. Teachers who refused to comply were fired or arrested. Parents who objected were labeled enemies of the state. The Nazi school system wasn't about learning. It was about programming. By the age of 10, children knew not only to hate but to obey without thinking. They repeated oaths: "I will always be ready to give my life for Adolf Hitler," not as soldiers but as students. By age 14, German boys were required to join the Hitler Youth. It looked like a scout group: hiking, camping, sports, but behind every activity was a lesson in discipline, violence, and control. Boys were taught to fight, to follow orders instantly, to ignore pain. They learned to shout "Heil Hitler" louder than they could think. Emotions were signs of weakness. Independent thought was dangerous. Girls too had their path: the League of German Girls. They were trained to be mothers of the Reich, strong, silent, and loyal. Their value came from obedience and childbirth. Weekends weren't spent with family. They were spent in uniform, rehearsing war, learning how to report on traitors, and even practicing with weapons. These were not games. These were rehearsals for fanaticism. As the war turned against Germany, Hitler's plans became more desperate, and so did his use of children. By 1943, teenage Hitler Youth members were being sent to the front lines. Boys as young as 12 were handed rifles and told to fight. Many didn't even know how to shoot. Some were placed in anti-aircraft units. Others were sent to the Eastern Front, one of the most brutal battlefields in history. In the final defense of Berlin, Hitler ordered children to fight Soviet tanks with grenades tied to sticks. It wasn't bravery. It was brainwashing. These children had been trained to obey. So when the Reich called, they marched to their deaths. Thousands died believing they were serving something glorious, never realizing they had been used. The war ended. The Third Reich fell. But the damage didn't stop when the bombs did. For many children who had survived, the end of the war brought confusion, shame, and trauma. Their heroes were criminals. Their beliefs were lies. Their childhoods had been stolen by ideology. Some former Hitler Youth members spent decades trying to unlearn what had been planted in them. Others stayed silent, haunted by memories. The psychological scars of obedience without question remained. Germany eventually dismantled the Nazi education system. But the world learned a chilling lesson: you don't need chains to enslave a generation. You only need control over their minds. And that is the darkest legacy of Hitler's war on children.